half-brother Roger, who had been engaged in trying to obtain a pardon for a drug dealer, and also engaged in explaining how he'd come by a brick-thick block of travellers' cheques. There was the usual obfuscation about no proven quid pro quo, but I noticed, in the aftermath of the rich pardon, that it had been several months since I'd been able to get into a fight over whether Clinton was a cheap crook or not. Believe me, I remember when this was otherwise. Henry Kissinger, challenged on television to meet my accusation that he was responsible for war crimes and crimes against humanity, with a maniacal and desperate attempt to change the subject, and denounced me as a denier of the Nazi Holocaust. He also followed custom in mentioning Mother Teresa and, for some reason, Jackie Kennedy. This enabled me to bring legal proceedings against him, both for defamation in my own case and, via the discovery process, to demonstrate that he was a practised and habitual liar. Considering what I had said about him in print, the disproportion between my suing him and him suing me was evident to all. But I could prove that what I said was true, whereas he could not, and that is still a difference. Adlai Stevenson once said to Richard Nixon, "If you stop telling lies about me, I'll stop telling the truth about you." I like the euphony, but I'd have no right to make such a bargain with the man who devastated Cambodia and Cyprus and Chile and East Timor. So this was an amazing and wondrous month, perhaps the best of my life. I finished my centennial study of George Orwell in the same period, much more civilized to be writing about him than any of the above. I tell you about it not just in order to boast, though there is that. It went to make up for many, many other months, when the celebrity culture and the spin scum and the crooked lawyers and pseudo-statesmen and clerics seem to have everything their own way. They will be back, of course. They are always back. They never leave. But their victory is not predetermined. And there are vindications to be had as well, far sweeter than anything contained in the meretricious illusion of good notices or a good press. I hope I shall be able to reinforce some of this in the following pages, which I once again thank you for provoking me to write. Christopher Hitchens, Stanford, California, Independence Day 2001. Introduction. The ensuing pages represent my tentative acceptance of a challenge that was made to me in the early months of the year 2000. Could I offer any advice to the young and the restless, any counsel that would help them avoid disillusionment? Among my students at the New School in New York, and in the bars and cafes of the other campuses where I spoke, there were many who retained the unfashionable hope of changing the world for the better, and, which is not quite the same thing, of living a life that would be, as far as possible, self-determined. This conversation had taken many forms over the years, until I began to feel the weight of every millisecond that marked me as a grizzled soixante-huitard, or survivor of the last intelligible era of revolutionary upheaval, the one that partly ended and partly culminated in les événements de 89. Then came the proposal to state and discuss the matter in epistolary form. To be specific, the form suggested by Rainer Maria Rilke in his Letters to a Young Poet. My immediate reaction was to recall what Byron said in his poem of reproach to the servile Greeks. And shall thy lyre so long divine degenerate into hands like mine? However, various of my students thought it might be worthwhile, or at least potentially amusing, and the following letters are written to one of them in distilled form, as if she represented them all. Chapter 1. My dear X, so then, you rather tend to flatter and embarrass me when you inquire my advice as to how a radical or contrarian life may be lived. The flattery is in your suggestion that I might be anybody's model, when almost by definition a single existence cannot furnish any pattern, and if it is lived in dissent,